Hey everyone, it's me, Simon Wesley, once again, and sorry about. Oh, first off, sorry for delaying the stream a bit. I was okay. I was playing basketball, and it went on for longer than I expected. But and I also want to apologize for the lack of. What's my mouth? Wow. Okay, sorry. Um. Okay, so yeah, last week it was yeah, last week I got absolutely jam packed with a ton of stuff popping up at once, so I wasn't able to stream like I had wanted to last week. But yeah, this week we're gonna have more streams. Things have cleared up a little bit more. I'm gonna be managing my time better too. But yeah, so yeah, like I said on the schedule I posted, um, yeah, as I mentioned on the schedule or on the schedule I put in the community post, we are probably going to be finishing up Witch on the Holy Knife this week. Which again, like I mentioned, it's a it's a shame. Like on the one hand, it's a shame that we're gonna be finishing it up, but I am excited to see where it goes. Cause this has I've really enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed Mahoyo. Like this is some good stuff. But yeah, let's jump right into it. I can't wait to see Alco beat Toko. I can't wait to see Alco kick Toko's teeth in. They made a perfectly hateable antagonist. Alco had not hung up, but the line remained silent. Alice set down the receiver, quickly put on her mantle, and made for the entrance, moving her injured body by sheer willpower alone. Along the way, she paused, turned to Sojiro, and looked directly at him. Alice hesitated for a moment, before pushing aside her anxiety and grabbing his hand. Oh, hey, she's... Okay, they're getting the church involved? Actually, wait, I'm actually just surprised that there's a church admittedly, I'm a little surprised that there's a church there. Alice left the mansion and made her way down to the tree-lined path. She was clearly determined, but the look in her eyes betrayed her pain. Sojiro asked Alice, whose grip on his hand was light but unyielding. Alice had thought of everything. She turned to the mansion and lightly snapped her fingers. Oh, that's a lot of birds. In response, a window opened, and countless starlings took flight. If Alco is still alive, do not let her heart stop. Alice commanded the birds firmly.
しずきくんは裏庭から青子の自転車を持ってきて。
Sotro let slip his discomfort at the thought of that thing, the custom-made red bicycle. When he was cleaning the incinerator, Alco had verbally assaulted him for nearly scratching it.
いいけど、どうするつもりなんだ、アリスは。
ここにいるより教会にいた方がしずきくんは安全よ。
Okay, so she's thinking of his
私
safety.
も急がないといけない。しずきくん、二人乗りできる？
Can take us... Minor spelling mistake. While Sojiro had seen people riding tandem and was confident he could imitate him, he still wasn't quite certain he could trust a bicycle with his life. Moreover, its frame was so light, he was unsure if it could support both their weights. I mean, I think Alice... Okay, I'm pretty sure Alice is like 90 pounds. I'm pretty sure that could take her weight and yours. Like, she's light as a feather, pretty much.
できないならいいわ。
I like Alice. Alice turned as if to snub him, then began walking. I like Alice. I like Alice. Her just blunt attitude towards everything is funny. Unfortunately for Sojiro, he was now on her bad side.
いや、そういう意味じゃないんだ。アリスとはイメージが合わなかったから。
Ignoring his pleas, she continued briskly toward the woods. There was no way she was going to ride the bike now. Sensing her stubborn streak, he desperately called out to her.
待った、今のはこっちが悪かった。すぐに持ってくるから、怒るのはつけにしておいてくれ。
Alice stopped. As soon as he saw her stopped, he hurried to the rear courtyard, grabbed the key from where it was hanging, and used it to unlock Alco's bicycle. Bicycle. I wanna ride my bicycle. By the time Sojiro brought it back to the front of the mansion, Alice was continuing toward the forest.
なんとなくつかめてきたな。
Muttering to himself, he straddled the bike. He rested his foot on a pedal. It felt light, but sturdy. Confident the bike could support his weight analysis, he began pedaling.
アリス。
She turned as he called out to her, before shooting him a piercing glare.
行こう。後ろの荷台に乗ってくれ。でもクッションがないから痛いと思う。辛かったら言ってくれ。止めるから。
私は大丈夫よ。しずきくんが嫌じゃなければの話だけど。
He had hit the nail on the head. Alice definitely held a grudge over the smallest things.
そういうことなら問題ないよ。アリスが後ろにいてくれるのは嬉しい。それで、行き先は間境界でいいんだな。
Unabashed and undaunted, he plowed on. Ah, she's blushing. His tone seemed to ease Alice's mood. She nodded calmly and took a seat on the luggage rack above the rear tire.
手を回すけど、私が触れても平気。
ん？大丈夫だよ。体力があるのはさっき証明しただろ。
Yeah, plus he carried you back. Plus he carried you back like 10 kilometers. Alice silently wrapped her arms around Sojiro. Once she had held on tightly enough, he gripped the handlebars.
よかった。
But yeah, I don't think he minds you holding on to him after he's carried you like 10k. After he carried you 10k.
何が良かったの？
Oh, he said quietly. Sojiro turned to her, an ambiguous expression on his face, and then began pedaling vigorously. He let go of the brakes, and the bicycle hurtled down Shido Inuzuka's steep incline. Surprised by the sudden speed, Alice gasped and clutched Sojiro tighter. She almost protested, but stopped when she saw the serious expression on Sojiro's face. Instead, she decided to tighten her grip. Under the night sky, a young girl had put her faith in a young boy. That's not ominous at all. That red spike in that red glare in the distance is certainly not ominous. Faster than a roller coaster, the bicycle hurtled down toward Misaki Station. Around the station, there was no sight of cars or people. While the town slept under its snowy blanket, two people were racing like the wind. While he pedaled, the boy said,
本当によかった。二人乗りが思ったより簡単で。
But he was alone in his relief. It was their first bicycle ride together, and they spent it speeding down an empty highway. The boy's words were lost to the howling wind, fortunately. In spite of the late hour, there were still lights on in the church. Originally, the only light at this time of night, it came from the entrance to the sleepless hospital, ever vigilant and ready to receive patients. However, this was a quiet town with little nightlife. The hospital saw perhaps one emergency patient per night, however, and it was not equipped to handle tonight's sole patient. It was a little before 1 o'clock in the morning. Leaving the bicycle outside, the two headed into the church. With its snow-covered roof, the church looked like it was wearing a white hat that lit up the darkness. In the entrance stood a tall shadow. The man's voice was placid. Dressed in a long coat, he had been waiting for Alice.
ユイカが見ています。私が駆けつけた時には手遅れでした。青崎の家に伝令を願いたいのですが。
青子はそれを望まないわ。それに、あちらも今は城に囚われているそうです。
Castle? The two exchanged pleasantries. Sojiro did not move from the foot of the stairs.
おや、そちらは。
Though the father seemed calm, his words had an edge to them. As if to protect Sojiro from his gaze, Alice stepped between them.
彼は青子の使い魔。契約はまだなされていないけれど。
使い魔ってアリス。
Sojiro was about to complain, but Alice shot him a fiery glare. That all but said, just shut up and play
そう
along.
ですか。そのような申告はありませんでしたが、届けが遅れたのは不毛。外部の魔術師と交戦中でしたからね。あなたたちはその撃退を最優先にした。ということで。
Alice nodded in thanks.
では通ります。彼の同行を許可しなさい。
ご自由に。私はこれより朝廷に向かいます。管理者が変わるのなら、両教会への資料を用意しなければいけませんので。ああ、留守中は律香に任せてありますから、必要なものがあれば彼女に。
As if passing the baton, Father Adi exited the church. Sojiro took 2 full steps back to give him a wide berth. The priest had a dignified air about him. To put it bluntly, he was strikingly beautiful. Straight nose, glistening lip, not a single imperfection on his mildly effeminate face. Okay. But that only went as far as his appearance. His manner lacked any hint of softness or grace. Just by looking at him, you could tell he was dependable, like tempered steel, despite being somewhat unapproachable. The priest disappeared silently into the night, the darkness of his coat overpowering the moonlight. In all, Sojiro watched him leave.
なんか仙人みたいな人だな。
That was my water. In his own way, Sojiro was expressing affection. For some reason, Father Ailey's distant tone made him feel nostalgic. Alice gave Sojiro a deathly stare.
気を許さないで。彼は教会の人間よ。
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the church was at least to some degree at odds with the Magic Association. I mean, it makes sense.
私たちを監視する側だけど、今回は彼の手を借りるしかなかっただけ。許されるなら真っ先に消えてほしい人間だから。
Her curse ringing in the air, Alice placed her hand on the doors to the chapel. They were twice her height, and who knows how heavy. It did not look like she could open them anytime soon. Sojiro climbed the stairs 3 at a time and helped Alice push the towering doors inward. Ooh, hey, honestly, that's a pretty nice chapel. The dim light of the chapel brought with it this familiar scent of burning oil. The ecclesiastical interior was breathtaking. The tall ceiling, stained glass windows on every wall. It felt intended to illustrate the presence of the Holy Spirit within those chambers. Like the foyer in the Kuonji estate, there was not a single heater. Their cold made the chapel feel more severe. The gentle voice echoed through the chapel, incongruous to its surroundings. Oh, hey. I can very vaguely see the stained glass windows up in the top part of it. I don't know what the one on the left is supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure the one on the right is supposed to be of the Virgin Mary. Yeah, I've been in a few Catholic chapels. They're very beautiful. The gentle voice echoed through the chapel, incongruous to its surroundings. It was the voice of a woman. Alice made her way past the rows of pews toward the front altar. Sojiro closed the large doors and hurried after her. Sojiro showed himself, surprising the woman. They stared intently at each other, wondering what the other was doing here.
まずいことに知り合い。宗十郎さん、引っ越したって話だけど、もしかしてあっちゃんのところに下宿してるの？
I'm guessing him speaking to her was in one of the side stories that I missed. Or that I hadn't looked at yet. Sojiro nodded. Alice turned visibly sour at this unexpected development.
どういうこと？しずきくん。
Okay, I'm gonna guess that they were neighbors who spoke to each other.
お魚屋さんでしょっちゅう割引してもらったり、荷物持ちを頼んでみたり、たまにお茶飲んだりする主婦の友みたいな。意味がわかりません。律香さん結婚していないでしょ。
Needless to say, Sojiro was also not a quote-unquote housewife's best friend and all that suggested. Calling him the gay best friend? What? I mean, I'm guessing that's what the joke was. I mean, I'm guessing that's what is being implied here. I could be wrong. Very wrong. But there were more urgent matters at hand. But I like her, she's funny.
律香さんの場合、どこまで本気かわからないから。おかしなところは全部追求しておかないといけないだけよ。あら素敵。仲のいい姉妹みたいね、私たち。じゃあ、その信頼に応えて本当のこと言うと、彼とは町内会の顔見知りよ。スパイ行為とかそういうんじゃないし。 そもそもそんな器用な人じゃないでしょ、宗十郎さんは。
From the neighborhood association. I'm guessing that's like a neighborhood watch or something. Alice is blushing. Alice stared straight at Sojiro to let him know she was mad at him for hiding this from her.
本当だ。魚屋でバイトしてる時に知り合った人だ。前に親切にしてもらったんで、 お礼にイワシを1匹サービスしたら、それ以来ごひいきに。
A singular free sardine?
そうそう。商店街で買い物してれば、嫌でも操縦士さんとは顔見知りになるわ。
Also, do you really think this would have been relevant information, or something that he thought was relevant? Him or him knowing a cute lady, or him knowing a cute woman, and giving her a sardine every now and then to keep her coming back to the place he worked?
あっちゃんも怒るぐらいなら買い物に来ればいいのに。密かな商店街の
アイドルとは人気者という意味で、値切りやすいかもって意味じゃないよな。
His apparent popularity would have to be questioned another time. Collecting herself, Alice focused on the door in the recesses of the church.
事情は知りませんが、彼は青子の連れです。その他に説明はいりますか？ああ、やっぱりそういうことなのね。ま、言いたいことはいろいろあるけど、今はそれどころじゃないし。ええ、了解したわ。他ならぬあっちゃんの頼みだし、特殊な例だけど、彼はこちらで保護しましょう。
Alice nodded and began walking to the door.
アリス。
ダメよ、宗十郎さん。
As Sojiro was about to follow Alice, Ritsuka stepped in his way.
あなたは行ってはいけません。彼女たちに任せなさい。
She asserted bluntly. Meanwhile, Alice had reached the door and entered further into the chapel.
あなたのためよ。青子の容体は普通の人が見ていいものじゃない。それとも嫌な思いをしてもいいくらい青子が心配なのかしら？
Sojiro was not able to give an immediate answer. It had finally hit him just how bad a state Aoko must be in. Based on Alice's condition when he found her, he intuited that Aoko's injuries might be even worse. He tried to imagine her expression in that state, but could not. I might need to... Depending on how nasty... Like they had a bit of discretion... Like, I know Alice's injuries were pretty nasty, but... Like... They didn't, like, draw him that bad, but I might need to move the CG off panel. Or off stream for a second when it transitions to where Aoko is. Literally. He had never been worried about her before. Not truly.
Hi.
He answered her reflexively. Ritsuka sighed at the boy's naivety, but nonetheless stepped aside.
どうぞ、行ってらっしゃい。アリスさんが使ったドアから入って4番目の部屋よ。今一番取り込んでる頃だから、ゆいちゃんの邪魔だけはしないように。
Sojiro thanked her and went after Alice, leaving Ritsuka Susei, the self-proclaimed everybody's friendly neighbor, alone.
さて、ゆいかあたりなら止めるんでしょうけど、ま、私は宗十郎さんの味方だし、少々スパルタと自覚しておりますが、これも親切な姉心と思って、宗十郎さんには後悔していただきましょう。
She spoke with force, but her words echoed aimlessly around the chapel. With a sigh, she shrugged her shoulders and made the sign of the cross in a rather unpious manner. The sound of Sojiro's footsteps grew fainter. His lack of hesitation left a pain in her heart, and not because he did not look back at her, but because he was choosing to ignore the primal fear inside of him. Okay, I'm gonna move this off panel for a second. Okay. Okay, I will, when it gets clear it's about to transition to where Aoko is, I'm going to move it off the screen. Because, given that it's implied that Aoko's injuries are worse than Alice's, which were already pretty bad, but I didn't feel like... But... I don't think we're bad enough to pull off stream. I'm having a feeling that this might be worse. An elderly man once said, "An animal's death and a human's are two different things. You may think they are the same, but they differ to their core. Our heads have known the difference since the dawn of man. An animal's corpse, be it a pig's or a deer's, is different. If the swing of an axe or a machete is violent, so must a human corpse be. Therefore, before you see one with your own eyes, you should at least understand it with your ears. Listen closely, Sojiro. When a person dies, blood flows like a crimson river. It's too much to bear. Perhaps because he was not used to the stone path beneath his feet, Sojiro's mind wandered back to the words he'd heard as a child. Oh. Okay. I'll move it back up in a moment. The instant he opened the door, there was a palpable change in the... Oh, I'll move it back once we're done seeing Alco. The instant he opened the door, there was a palpable change in the air. The room was small with only a simple bed and a small wooden dresser. There on the bed, blank was laying on her side. Tending to her was the woman he'd just seen in the chapel, Ritsuka. No, she only looked a lot like her. Her eyes were closed and her garments covered in blood. He had met her maybe once before. Yuika Susei, a nun at the church. She was doing something to Alco. Yuika held a pair of scissors and some thread, and oh my gosh, that is a lot of blood. Her hands... Okay, she's stitching Alco up. Her hands moved delicately yet quickly, as though playing an organ. Her movements were precise, as if flawlessly reading sheet music. One by one, the supply of bandages diminished. Bandages recently applied to the wounds were quickly replaced with fresh ones. Gauze was placed everywhere to try and cope with the amount of blood. Oh. Once white cloth net was now dyed red and discarded. The dressing scattered around the floor resembled roses. In a wilted rose garden, the nun played her organ. The scene looked unlike any reality Sojiro knew. It was clear why the air had changed. There was a savage odor in the room. Even though he was experiencing it for the first time, he knew what it was. The smell burned his lungs. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the smell... Yeah. When you're in the room with someone who's really badly injured, there is just a pungent smell of blood. Like, I've been pretty badly injured in the past, and... Yeah, Yeah, it is, that smell is not... It's not something I like remembering. But anyway, he could not bring himself to look at the bed. Fighting his feelings, his eyes refused to move there. He noticed Alice next to the bed. Yet ever expressionless, she looked like a statue next to a grave, except she was trembling ever so slightly. It could have been from fear, anxiety, rage, or a combination of the three. Before her lay a life on the verge of death. But whose life? It was difficult to tell with only a glance. Some sort of puppet covered in bandages, perhaps? Her hair should be beautiful, but it fell flat, disheveled. Despite her short breaths, her chest convulsed up, down. Facetious though the thought was, Sojiro recalled the rodeo machine on the roof of the department store. Painkillers and anesthesia could not have been working. New bandages were soaked crimson in seconds. Her fingernails bit into the sheets. Her face twisted in agony. Anesthesia would not be enough, so if she was still alive, she must be conscious too. It worried him that no one seemed concerned about this. At this stage, she would surely lose her mind before her life. Oh my god, just how badly the Toko maul her. In short, the boy never wanted to see anything like this ever again. Yet no wonder Ritsuka didn't want him to go in there. Yet no wonder she didn't want him to go in there. Because that would be like a nightmare. Walking into that room would be a nightmare. Bedsheets should be white, not red. With every blink, the color deepened. Sojiro was finally forced to accept that the bleeding mess in the center of it was her. He felt the blood surge in his veins, squeaking in the bed, sniffing the scissors, the gasps of agony. It all faded. All he could hear was his own pounding heartbeat. Smell of the blood she choked up sent a wave of nausea through him. His knees abandoned him. It was perfectly understandable. His brain had to shut his consciousness off to protect itself. Mine could only take so much reality. He would give anything to never see something like that again. Yeah, that one. Okay, the CG there was pretty gnarly. Okay, silly me. You know everything. Okay, I can pull it back up now because it's off that CG. Yeah, no, that felt way worse. That was way. You don't directly see Alco, but it just felt so much worse. And on she went. I kind of liked her smile, but she just had to go and say the one thing I wish she hadn't. The last day of middle school seemed so long ago. As the ephemeral cherry blossom petals danced around, my little dream was crushed. I'd never really considered myself strong. Oh hey, Alco's thoughts. At least until I began remembering those words from time to time. And lately, an idiot who said things like that had appeared in my life. I knew I always judged people more harshly than those around me, but to have someone I'd known only for a few days point that out was like a stab in the chest. Okay. You never lose sight of who you are. Okay. So I'm guessing part of what makes her strong is that she never loses sight of who she is. Not only that, the words sound so familiar. They made me so angry I couldn't see straight. Only him and one other person ever said anything like that to me. Then again, I suppose my sister said the same without actually saying it. You're different from us. But me being me, I took it as a curse rather than a compliment. My actions, my choices, my morals, all the good and bad I've done. When all's said and done, am I really any better than everyone else? Of course I am. I'll never sacrifice myself for those around me. They just had to call me strong. True to myself, in spite of how alone, stubborn, and ridiculous I know I can be. When I was younger, it only confused me. I mean, I don't know any other way. I am who I am. Frustrating fact is, I simply don't have the courage to give up. So why? Why do I get treated special for doing what comes naturally? Sunlight stirred her. Maybe it was the pain from having her whole heart. Maybe it was the pain from having her whole body held together by arcane threads, but Alco felt like she'd had a silly dream. She gulped air through her painful, parched throat. Gray rays of light shone through a small window, bringing her back to reality. I'm going to move this down, just in case we see a bloody Alco. Because I have... Given how much she was bleeding, she's probably going to look awful. Increasingly forced in awkward laughter. But no, this isn't funny. Sometimes I have a habit of laughing a bit when I feel awkward. Unable to bear it, Alco attempted to roll over, except she could only move her right arm. She tried lifting her arm, but couldn't feel anything past her elbow. Once she stopped concentrating on her bandaged arm, it fell to the bed like a stone. Okay. Alco took in her surroundings, moving only her eyes. Evidently, she had been asleep in this bed. Unable to feel certain parts of her body, she felt like a robot. The room was tiny and undecorated. It was like an apartment without a tenant, judging by the good repair, she guessed that she was in Ida Church. Outside, it seemed closer to noon in the morning. Clouds filled the sky as usual, dulling the sun's rays. Idly, she thought it could be enough to melt the snow outside. And then finally, she noticed the figure of a girl. Next to her bed, Alice Kuonji was sitting in a chair, unmoving. She called out to her, all too casually. It was more difficult to talk than she thought. Alice was her typical stoic self, although Alco did notice a glimpse of concern in her eyes. Hydrate or dihydrate, man.
寝てないんでしょ。肌が荒れてる。努力はしたわ。けど、瞳子さんに飲まされたものが解毒されるまで眠れそうにないの。半端な痛みはこういう時に生ぬるいわね。
What? Okay, okay, that actually. Okay. Okay, I was. Okay. I thought that was just a weird thing they added it, but no, it actually seems like it was intended. Alice's uncharacteristically vulgar comment helped Alco feel a little more like her usual self. She felt reassured having a comrade in arms by her side instead of a concerned neighbor.
そう。アリスもやられたの。状況は大体予想してるけど、一応細部を聞かせてくれない？
Alco remained horizontal as she spoke with a cool tone. Despite Alco's condition, Alice granted her request. After all, they'd known each other for 2 years. Alice knew exactly the kind of anesthesia Alco Ozaki needed right now. Knowing other people's pain, Alice Kuonji's battle with Toko Ozaki ended in the former's victory. The Thames Troll was a special familiar even among fairy tale monsters. While lacking the incredible reality warping abilities of Flat Stark, its sheer mass, durability, and strength were second to none. Toko's rune magecraft was rendered completely ineffective by its stone armor. In all fairness to Toko, most mages would not stand a chance against the bridge giant. The reason lay in the mystic's body. As a general law of magecraft, a mystic will lose to a stronger, older mystic. The history of the bridge giant dated back well over 1,000 years. Its origins could be traced to the 1st century when Britannia was conquered by the Romans. Conversely, despite having roots dating back to the Age of Gods, runes had unfortunately been lost to time. Rune magecraft was little more than an attempt to revive and use a dead art. However, monsters from fairy tales like the troll were different. They lived in the hands of Alice Kuonji. The magical world was vast, but one could probably count on one hand the number of magecraft that still functioned after being chanted into existence a millennia ago, as Alice's ploys did. In contrast, Toko, the rune user, was only about 2 decades old. Carving a rune took only a moment. There's no way a quick spell could defeat the personification of London Bridge in Alice's homeland. That being said, a beast had appeared that surpassed even those from fairy tales. Beowulf, the Golden Beast. It seems absurd to compare a small and relatively powerless wolf to a towering stone giant. The Thames Troll's attacks were earthquaking. A direct hit from its 50-ton strikes would smash anything to paste, while a glancing blow would still create mincemeat. And yet the beast had attacked head-on and torn right through it. The wolf's fur bristled, and the creature metamorphosed like liquid. It was a breathtaking display. The wolf howled to the moon as if in joy and streaked forth like a bolt of golden light. In an instant, the duel was decided. The radiant spear of a wolf flew straight through the giant's chest and sank its teeth into its heart. The troll exploded. Chunks of stony muscle rained down. Luminous fur scattered in the wind. 2 mystics dispersed without a trace and returned from whence they came. The curtain fell on a battle straight out of mythology. There among the rubble of the fairy tale monster was the golden wolf standing like a flame. What came after could barely be described as a battle. It was more like a slaughter of defeated pawns. The wolf leapt on Alice, disemboweling her with ease. Its claws cut through the protective wards on Alice's coat like a hot knife through butter. Golden wolf, this wolf, which understood human speech, could only be the magical creature known as the werewolf. Werewolves were the forest people of Western Europe, with origins far more ancient than the fabricated vampire legends of the continent. However, None were known to have golden coats. It was said that the most elite werewolf bloodlines boasted silver fur. Silver werewolves were pack leaders, and werewolves of that caliber were considered phantasmal rather than merely magical creatures. But a golden werewolf was superior even to that, and so transcended human knowledge. Alice Squelchy's ploys were among the ultimate mystics who had been created by humankind. Therefore, the golden wolf could only have been a mystic born of the planet. When a celestial body has been active for millions, even billions of years, occasionally a miraculous droplet of creation spills over into our current world. The mystic had to be over 3,000 years old. Human mage. No. Any mage living in the current magical paradigm would be helpless against Golden Wolf. Not even in theory would they stand a chance of defeating it. Which meant that this werewolf was Alco and Alice's worst nightmare.
そう、アリスがお手上げの相手だものね。私がどうにかできるはずもなかったわけだ。でも、要は魔術でなければいいのよね。
Do you think a silver bullet would work? if a silver bullet could work, I could take it down from like 300 yards.
テムズの動力は魔力だけど、テムズのパンチは純粋な衝撃でしょ。当たりさえすればぺしゃんこじゃないの。残念だけど、あれ、基本は狼の姿なだけで、状況によって形を変えるわ。テムズの腕を受け止めた時は大猿みたいになっていたし。
A giant ape-like thing. So the Thames troll got beaten by King Kong.
機関銃やロケットで狙ってもかわされるか、体の硬い生き物に変化して防ぐんじゃないかしら。地球上の生き物なら何にでも変われるってことか。
Again, just give me an anti-material rifle and a silver 50 BMG. Don't know many animals that can stand up to that.
でもまあ、質量までは無理かな。基本は2メートル台の生物のいいとこ取りってあたりで勘弁してほしいよね。ねえ、すごく関係ないけど、深海の生き物に変わられたらちょっと怖いと思わない？
He turns into a sunfish. Alco narrowed her eyes as she bemoaned this creature's existence. The conversation appeared to have revived her fighting spirit. Once again, her eyes were focused and her thoughts clear. Alco was back to her usual self.
その後はアリス、うまく逃げられたの？いいえ、私もあの狼にやられたわ。
Alice explained how the wolf had her pinned to the ground. Incidentally, she kept the part about Sojiro rather short. Alice herself was not entirely sure why she felt it necessary to leave most of that information out.
アリスが相手をした後、休む間もなく私のところに来たわけか。初めから昨日で決着をつけるつもりだったんだ、兄貴。姉妹かな。ここぞって時のタイミングは一緒だったの。切り札は見せたからには敵を殲滅しなくちゃいけない。姉貴は視点を残り2つにしておいて、自分の正体を告げてこっちの戦力を分けさせた。その時点で相手を投入してくることは覚悟してたけど、まさか人狼なんて騎馬物とはね。
I mean, to be okay, yeah. Alco's right here. I don't think there's any way either of them expected her to have a werewolf. Yeah, I don't think there was any way for either of them to have expected her to have a werewolf. Alco let out a heavy sigh. Alice nodded slightly in agreement.
それはそれとして、宗十郎がアリスを助けに行くなんてね。私が東子の立場なら、報復の可能性は一つ残らず排除する。
Okay, I think she's just worried that he's now officially involved in this and that Toko's going to rip him to pieces.
私たちがどうにかなった後、猫の手首ひねるみたいに片付けられるわよ。しずきくんならこちらで保護してもらってるけど。
Alco's eyes widened.
どういう風の吹き回し？アリスがあいつの世話を焼くなんて。 だって放っておいたら青子が怒ると思う。
Alice responded with her eyes closed. Alco Alco frowned in silent indignation, as if she wanted to protest where Alice got that idea from.
まあいいけど、それじゃあ今ここにいるんだ、宗十郎。
Still unable to move her neck, she looked around as best she could.
彼なら気分を悪くして倒れたわ。今は営利神父の寝室を借りているけど。
Alco furrowed her brow at collapsed. Sure, he was under the church's protection, but had Toko set the wheels in motion for his death?
何があったの？一体。
He saw how badly you got injured and passed out from the shock. Alice paused for a moment before carefully answering the question.
それが彼、あなたを見て嘔吐したの。
She had decided to be blunt. Alco was taken aback. For several seconds, dim sunlight leaked through the window. Once she had found her voice again, she muttered,
いいけど、ひどい侮辱よ。だって。
Perhaps amused or perhaps exhausted from staying up all night, Alice cracked a tiny giggle.
何よ、そんなにおかしい、アリス。さあ、どうかしらね。けど、しずきくんにも言い分はあるでしょう。
Alco appraised her physical state. She was dressed in a hospital gown. Bandages covered the majority of her body. Her right leg was in a plaster cast. Since she could move her right arm, she brought her bandaged fingers up to her throat.
そっか、思い出した。あのガキ、まず私の首元に噛みついたんです。
Oh, yeah, that is, Okay, the fact that she's alive after all of that is genuinely pretty impressive.
すごかったわよ、首が噛み砕かれるのって。ゴキンって音が頭の中で。
How are you alive? I mean, I know you're a magician, but how are you alive?
ち、あそこから好き勝手やられたもんだから、つい忘れてた。
So bit in the neck snapped. Most of the bones in your body are probably broken as well. You lost who knows how much blood. How is Alco alive after? Okay, I know she's a magician, but even like an inexperienced, even though she's a magician, she's still inexperienced in actually fighting. So I'm surprised she's still alive. Alco sounded upbeat, but the look in her eyes was anything but. She had been torn to pieces, but her life had been, quote-unquote, mercifully spared. At least she hadn't been dismembered. She'd been bitten, beaten, and her bones broken. Magic crests containing the Yazaki's secret arts decorated her body. Even her spine was broken. Even if her spine was broken, as long as her body was still alive, the crests could piece it back together. Despite this crest easing the pain a little, she still hurt enough to want to kill that wolf 100 times over.
視点は全部壊された。これで三崎氏の霊脈はフリーってわけね。全容を把握してるのはうちらだけの特権だったけど、トーコは昔から知ってる以上、解析の手間もいらないと。真剣な話、所有権の書き換えまで何時間かかると思う？トーコさんなら2日かからないでしょうね。支店の修復は土地そのものに任せるしかない。支店のプロテクトが治る頃にはこの町はもう彼女のものよ。明日の夜明けとともに破産する我が身とはね。それでアリスの方はどうなの？思考魔術だけなら少しは。あとは小道具に頼ることになるでしょうね。ああ、お話にならないか。
Alco went silent again, staring straight at the ceiling. Alice knew all too well what that look
それ
meant.
でもやるんでしょ、青子は。まあね、私諦めるのってできないから。で、そういうアリスはどうなのよ。私は一度自分のものになったものは決して人には渡さない。
Alco muttered in agreement to Alice's terse response. Alice's intense attachment to her possessions was enough to make even Alco shiver. Once something is mine, it stays mine. Take it a step further, betrayal was an unforgivable sin. His personal motto was further proof of her uncompromising nature.
決まりね。
Okay.
じゃ、悪いけどもう少し休ませて。今晩までには何とか動けるようにするから。
Yeah, Toko is a complete psycho. As the nun who stitched her back together had heard that, she would have fainted. Alco could barely even eat in her current condition. Even so, Alice nodded and stood up. As Alco's partner, she knew that once her mind was made up, she had to trust her. Silently, the girl in black began to take her leave. She stopped in front of the door, her hand to her mouth.
アリス？
Alco was curious, suspecting that Alice had something silly to say again. Quite the contrary. Instead of blushing, Alice furrowed her brow like she was thinking over a difficult...
アリス？
Instead of blushing, Alice furrowed her brow like she was thinking over a difficult riddle. Alco called out, but Alice remained with her back to her roommate.
なんで間に合ったのかしら。
She spoke as if the words had accidentally burst out from her thoughts. Alice's question was about something Alco could not possibly have guessed.
あの時もそう、私たち始発で帰ってきたのに。
She carried on mumbling at the door. Unable to find an answer, Alice gloomily put her hand on the doorknob.
言いたくないなら別にいいけど、何がどうしたっていうのよ、アリス。
Alice did not respond. She opened the door to leave the room and left a few words hanging in the air.
どうでもいいことだけど、ユイカさんにはしずきくんは見えなかったそうよ。
The door closed with a thud.
そりゃまた珍しい。
Huh. Alco mumbled to herself from her bed, seeming slightly happier. Blind since birth, Yuika Susei saw the world through her other senses. She was especially sensitive to enemies or those who bore ill will, and typically viewed almost everyone as a threat. Presumably because that was the easiest thing to pick up on. So when she said she couldn't see Sojiro, that meant he was completely harmless. And then, that harmless individual decided to pay the small sick room a visit. Sojiro looked like a stiff breeze could knock him over. It made Alco wonder who the real patient was.
何しに来たの、あんた。
Though Alco could barely move, she was still able to give him the cold shoulder. His expression gaunt, Sojiro grunted something or another before beginning to speak more coherently.
アリスが客間で眠ったから礼拝堂にいたんだけど、人が集まりだしたんで、こっちに逃げてきた。
あ、礼拝の時間か。クリスマスだってのによくやるわ。
It was indeed Christmas, but regular Mass was on Christmas Eve. The ones gathering in the chapel must have been truly devout followers. Tourists were rare in Misaki, after all. So much so that almost no one visited the area this time of year. Worshippers must have been locals.
それで別にどうってことないでしょ。探せば顔見知りもいるんじゃない？
Helko was as distant as ever. She clearly had not forgotten the fact that he had vomited when he saw her, and a hint of spite leaked into her voice. Then again...
いや、ちょうどいい機会だから、いろいろと聞きたくなって、少し話をしていいかな。
Since Helko was always in a bad mood, Sojiro did not pick up on anything out of the ordinary. She wanted to tell him to go drink some water because he looked ready to collapse, but he didn't seem aware of his own condition. And to be fair to him, Alice did say Alco was in bad shape, given how unaccustomed blood Sojiro was. It was no wonder he had fainted.
ああ、そうか。話なんてまだ無理だな。すまない。出直してくれ。
Sojiro seemed to have misunderstood Alco, being deep in thought as not having enough stamina to speak. Naturally, this did not sit well with Alco.
待ちなさいよ。話だけなら別に構わないわ。やる気持て余してるし、暇つぶしがてらに相手してあげるわよ。ま、退屈しのぎにしてはちょっとグレード下がるけど、この際贅沢言ってられないし。
Well, that's at least nicer than she usually is to him. Okay, or Sojiro sensed this was going to be rough, but took a seat on the chair next to the bed.
で、何が聞きたいの？
Whoop. I should probably get a better chair at this point. This one squeaks too much. Elko spoke energetically in an attempt to distract from her weakened appearance. Naturally, she knew she was fooling no one.
やっぱり青崎は強いな。
Except for Sojiro, because he's an oblivious dolt. Sojiro said, nodding in admiration. Elko shot him an unimpressed look in response to the unwanted praise.
あんたってほんと間が悪いわ。いいわよ。私の夢の話だから。こっちが気に病むことは。
She glowered, remembering. Come to think of it, almost everyone in her dream was here in the church, turning her dour expression into an irritated one.
やめやめ、こんなつまんない話。聞きたいことがあるなら手っ取り早く。
よかった。じゃあまず今の状況を聞かせてくれないか。東子さんの話じゃ俺も無関係じゃないそうだし。
Sojiro spoke calmly, making Alka wonder if he really understood the gravity of this situation. He was Toko's enemy now. He was defenseless and needed protection. Neither Alko nor Alice could help him, and the church could withdraw their sanctuary at any moment. He had picked a side, and that had turned him from innocent bystander into target. The answer he sought was as simple as that. He knew the facts. He was not a mage and was therefore powerless.
それでもアリスは助けられたわけだし。
Yeah, he's the absolute man. Alko did owe him for that. To say thanks, she decided to at least give him the whole story up until now.
よし、今までの経緯も含めて
Alright,
軽く
let's
説
hear.
明してみましょうか。
Alright, Alko, explain yourself.
私も何か得るものがあるかもしれないし。
How'd you get your teeth kicked in? Alko composed herself before beginning her explanation. The battle began at the end of November. A lot happened since then, including meeting Sojiro.
事の起こりは1ヶ月前。三崎市に貼られた結界の端っこが何者かに消されたのが発端だった。私が跡継ぎになってから5度目の三崎市を狙う敵の登場ってわけ。今回の敵は私たちとは直接戦わず、まず土地を奪うところから始めたわ。今までのやつは私たちを半人前と舐めていたから、大抵は真正面から仕掛けてきて、勝手にアリスの猟犬の餌食になったんだけど、まあそれはどうでもいいとして、町の結界には2種類あって、侵入者を見つけるものと土地の力を有効利用するものがあるの。敵が壊したのは土地の結界の方で、これが全部壊されると、私やアリスは土地の所有権を失ってしまう。土地のないはぐれ魔術師と同じになっちゃうのよ。もちろんそうならないように侵入者をあぶり出すための結界があるんだけど、こっちには何の
Yeah, because Toko knew it inside and out.
今回の敵は私の姉貴青崎東子その人だったんだから。青崎の結界は同族である姉貴を敵とみなさなかった。あるいは姉貴は結界の抜け道、構造の資格をついたのかもしれない。もともとうちの後継者はあの人だし、それぐらいの知識はあったでしょう。そうして姉貴は私たちに見つかることなく好き勝手に結界の視点を壊し始めた。時間をかけてゆっくり壊していったのに外からやってきた部外者を演じていたからでしょうね。さすがに連続して壊されればこっちも身内の犯行だと疑うし、うち親戚である浅木家とは仲悪いままだしさ。ま、姉貴の芝居に騙された私たちが間抜けなんだけど、セオリーとして結界崩しは長丁場になるものなの。管理地の結界は強固に作られているからね。普通は半年単位での攻防になる。攻める側はまず結界を形取る視点が何個あるか、それがどの5大要素でくくられているか、退去の正しい順序はどれか、 それらを地道に解き明かしていく。もちろん管理時の魔術師たちの目を盗みながら。対して守る側は侵入者がいることに気づくから、悪さをされる前に敵の拠点を見つけ出して外敵を排除する。こんな感じで結界崩しは長期戦あるいは前哨戦になるものなの。大抵は攻める側が視点を壊すぞとアピールして土地の持ち主を翻弄疲弊させてから魔術師同士の直接対決で決着がつくわ。なんで結界を全部壊す必要はないのよ。管理地の持ち主を始末した方が早いし、その後は術式さえ解読しちゃえば土地を結界ごと横取りできる。わざわざ壊して作り直すより昔からある結界の方が土地に馴染んでいて強力だしで一石二鳥でしょ。
That was how Alco and Alice were duped. They never thought the enemy would waste the time and effort needed to break all sigils.
だから私と視点を探すために街を調査している敵を待ち伏せてこれを片っ端から倒そうって。でも
Sorry,
そのうちの一つで
I'm trying to fix my sleep schedule.
三崎町の公園で山張って待ち受けていた時、どうでもいい第三者が覗き見してやがったのよ。
Indeed. It was the ultimate taboo in the world of magecraft. The existence of mages must never be revealed to
そ
outsiders.
の後のことは分かった。私は敵との小競り合いをアリスに任せて、それより重要な目撃者狩りに専念せざるを得なくなった。言っとくけど、これはあんたのことだからね。そこで我関せずみたいな顔しないこと。
No sooner had Alco said that, Sotro gave her that exact look. Clearly he had been listening, but not necessarily understanding.
ま、いいけどね。宗十郎がそんなだから秘密は漏れなかったんだし。で、あんたっていう目撃者を消そうとした私の単独行動は敵にしても都合のいいものだった。強敵であるアリスがいないんだから、敵はこれを機会に私を始末しようと特注品の人形を差し向けたと思っていたけど、あれはただの嫌がらせね、間違いなく。そうでなきゃ私そっくりの人形なんて派遣する。
Okay, yeah, that explains. Actually, yeah, that is completely within character for Toko to do. She is a complete psycho. I mean, Sotro nodded, thinking back to the Alco replica.
あれのことは忘れてちょうだい。まあ、そこから先はあんたもうすうす知ってるでしょ。私とアリスは敵との戦いに専念することになって毎日のように捜査の手を空振って
Yeah, where she.
決戦の夜を迎えて
Yeah, where that.
今こうしてる。
Yeah, where that werewolf no diffed both of you. Yeah.
大体の経緯はこん
That's long and short of it. She stared down at her body as if recalling what had happened would help her accept her current state. Under the sheet, magical energy steadily flowed toward her partially bandaged body.
これまでの君たちの話は分かったけど、肝心の今の状況はどうなっているんだ。
Sojo's specific concern was the reason Alco was lying there. More than anything, he wanted to know what had happened to her the night
な
before.
んかね、状況も何も完全に私たちの負け。
Judging by her tone, she would have raised both hands sarcastically in celebration if she could.
負けた？
You really that surprised, Sojo?
事実は正しく受け止めなくっちゃね。5つの視点が全部壊された時点で勝負はついたの。 管理地の所有権は宙ぶらりで、明日にはトーコの手に渡るでしょう。で、それを阻止したいこっちは、私もアリスもこのありさま。もう立場は逆転したから、これから私たちは挑戦者。つまりはぐれ魔術師ってことよ。
Which meant that Elko, Alice, and Sojiro only had a few more days with which to utilize the church's services. Ada Church was not only an arm of the Mages Association, but also a branch of the Holy Church. I'm guessing just the Catholic Church that monitored heresy. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, except everyone did. Anyway, Alco and Alice were owners of Misaki City's spiritual lands, but they belonged to neither of these organizations. The only reason the church helped them at all was because they were the land's administrators. Once those rights were lost, the church would have no reason to provide any further aid.
ユイカさんは教会の代行者だから、傷が塞がったなら明日にでも出ていけって言ってくる。教会にとっちゃ魔術師なんてもともと排除すべき商売敵だからね。バカリツカは。ま、泣きつけば力にはなってくれるでしょうけど。
Sojiro understood little of what Alco was talking about.
青崎、昨日の夜何があったんだ?
Sojiro pressed her, and Alco really wished he had not.
見てわからない。惨敗なんてものじゃないわ。喉に食いつかれる。体中好き放題噛まれまくる。挙句に右のマモなんてなくなってたそうよ。
Honestly, you got pretty impressive. You've got pretty impressive, like, resilience from just considering how badly you got mauled.
ま、アリスのチョコレートのおかげで出血死を免れたけど。
So wait, it was something Alice. Okay, she knocked on the caster on her leg. Alco spoke casually, but was trying to hide how much she wanted revenge for being humiliated. In contrast, Sojiro felt empty. The little color he had in his face began to fade. Was he repulsed by this terrible situation, or were his instincts telling him to flee? Regardless, he appeared very human.
なんでそこで固まる？あ、そっか。私を見て吐き出しちゃうぐらいナイーブなんだっけ、宗十郎ってば。大丈夫よ、今はくっついてるから。ユイカさんは治療専門だし、私だってただやられてたわけじゃないし。
She gave him a reassuring look, but his expression was unchanged. Alco expected him to worry, but this level of concern made it hard for even her to berate him. Feeling embarrassed, she started talking again.
けど姉切ったら、どうやってあんなのを手なずけたんだろう。金の狼なんて伝説の中にしかいないと思ってた。神代の神秘であるあいつには千年クラスの魔術じゃないと太刀打ちできない。かといって殴り合いでどうにかできる相手じゃないし。
As images of the night before entered Alco's mind, she bit her lip in anguish. Conversely, the bizarre phrase snapped Sojiro out of his state of shock.
そう、黄金の人狼。金狼って言った方がいいのかな。狼男って言ってもわからないわよね。人間と狼のいいとこ取りみたいなやつと思えばいいわ。野獣というより魔獣の類よ。普通の人狼なら対抗手段はあるんだけど、トウコが連れてるのは黄金の毛並みをした怪物でさ。あれは原初の人狼の血統で、魔獣を通り越して幻獣の域に達している。聖域の相手にはそいつらを上回る神秘、積み重ねた時間とか魔術の奥義じゃないと無効化されるのよ。魔術は万能だけど、この年月の差だけは覆せない。ま、人間の魔術師にとっては天敵みたいな自然災害ね。
Her words indicated more admiration than hatred. The way she'd whispered about the wolf. Strangely made sense to Sojo.
何？
いや、要するに青崎たちじゃかなわない相手なんだな。なんてひどいやつだ。アリスはお腹が裂かれてた。青崎は傷ついてないところはないぐらいだ。子供なのに。いや、子供だから加減がないのか。
Sojo's face was a ghostly pale as he muttered nervously. Alco merely nodded in agreement.
ほんと、人の体を何だと思っているのかしらね。あのお子さん。なぬ？
Actually, wait, how does he know? Wait a sec. What? Alco raised her head. She looked as if she had seen a ghost.
子供って言った？あんた、なんでそんなことまで知ってるの？
やっぱりそうなのか。金色の髪なんて2人もいないと思ったんだ。青崎が口にしたような怪物じゃなかったけど、森の奥で。
He just assumes. Wait, okay, it's back when they were cleaning up at the school. He's just assuming that the presumably foreign kid with blonde hair that he saw is the werewolf. I mean, he's probably right, but it's kind of funny. His tone was as curious as the things he was trying to articulate. Alco, however, had more pressing matters. Much more pressing.
どこで？
学校の旧校舎。あ、そういえば挨拶程度なら話もしたっけ。一度だけアルバイトの時に牛肉50キロを生で届けた。
Oh, 100 pounds. 50 kilos. Okay, yeah, that's about 110 pounds.
この大バカ者！
Oh my god, you absolute idiot. Okay. A strangely satisfying slapping sound rang out. Ignoring her wounds completely, Alco had grabbed a slipper and thrown it at Sojiro's unassuming face as hard as she could. She panted as Sojiro was not completely out of his chair. Okay, in fairness, Alco, do you really think he could be less of a tsundere for a moment? For a while, neither moved. What was that for, Elsa? The boy asked, unfazed, as he slowly picked himself up. He sat cross-legged as Alco scowled at him like an enemy.
当たり前じゃない。なんでそんな怪しいこと黙ってんのよ、あんたは。
You're forgetting that he had no idea that there was a golden werewolf until the night before, or until last night.
言うほどのことでもない。第一、君たちにこんな話をしても怒られるだけじゃないか。
Alco knew he was right, and so she swallowed her words. She mentioned themselves at dinner.
ところで今日、牛肉の山を担いで届けたんだ。一匹丸ごと。いや、あるところにはあるものだね。お金と食欲。
If he had actually said it, Alco and Alice's response would have been less than cordial.
それはそうだけど、本当に金髪の子供が通報者になったの？
Okay, at the very least, she's actually admitting that he's right. That he's right that neither her nor Alice would have cared.
それが青崎の言う人狼かどうか。少なくとも町中の料理店が入れ替わりでおかしな注文を届けてるのは事実だ。
確かに食事のたびにあいつを外に出してちゃ目立つだろうけど。
She did not want to believe it, but the child had to be the werewolf. Could Toko really have been so careless as to hide him in plain sight? It didn't matter at this point. With the werewolf's habitat revealed, Toko's base had been revealed too. To take over the bounded field, she needed an inconspicuous place to store materials. Misaki High School's old school building was the perfect place.
つまり、すべての鍵はあんたが隠し持ってたってわけね。
隠していたんじゃない。だいたい青崎が裏山の掃除に参加していたら、その時に分かったんじゃないか。飛び丸一人に任せず、青崎も掃除に出ればよかったんだ。
My man is on fire. In response to Sojo's infallible logic, Alco snapped her fingers. Okay, seriously? Instead of another slipper missile, she let the faithful white collar express how she felt. You're only hating him because he's right, Alco. With the tightening of the collar, Sojo realized something. Alco had changed. From the bed, she looked down on him with a commanding glare. Though weak from her injuries, she was as sharp as ever. You would be forgiven for forgetting she was ever a patient. She was raring to fight, and went without saying who her rage was directed at.
Aozaki?
Alco responded in a vulnerable tone. Perhaps she had been taken by surprise. Now she had an objective. She'd been lost in her own little world. Okay, one thing I will say in Alco's favor, even though she is a pretty mean person, she's at least very upfront and honest with how she is. Like, you know what you're getting into with Alco. She's mean and a jerk, but the kind of jerk that you can actually like because you know what they're about. They don't try to hide it. Toko, on the other hand, is the kind of person you absolutely would hate to meet because because she tries to pretend that she's a great person at first, only for her to stab you in the back.
ありがとう、宗十郎。
Huh, she's actually thanking him for once. He expected her to be sarcastic, but this time was different. She was genuinely thanking him. He had never known her to be like this and was taken aback.
あのね、とにかくトウコの居場所が分かったのはあんたのおかげだから、礼ぐらい言っておこうと思ったの。それがお気に召さなかった？
いや、お礼を言ってもらえるのはいいことだけど、まさかその体でトウコさんのところに行くつもりか。
His tone was closer to scolding than sympathetic. Alco simply nodded resolutely.
取られたものは取り返すものよ、宗十郎。それがすぐに相手のものになってしまう前にね。
I'm guessing she's gonna have to.
している暇はないわ。
I'm guessing she's gonna have to be using the fifth magic in order to beat Toko. She sounded unshakable. Even so, Sojo would not back
勝ち
down.
目がなくてもか。暇はないと言うけど、今はそれ以上にその傷だって今は見れるけど、昨日はひどかったじゃないか。
違うわ。あれは幸運なんかじゃない。そんな玉かっていうのよ、と。
幸運じゃない。
I'm guessing Toko wants her to live long enough to know that the land is stolen.
そう。トウコはね、私が生き残れる程度の傷にとどめたのよ。だから私は生きてるんだし。トウコは私が行くのを待ってる。お互いがお互いの舞台の幕を下ろすために。そうでなければ嫌だけど、あんたの言葉を借りるなら。
Irritation tainted Alco's words. From the side, she looked terrifyingly serious. She was ready to fight to the death. Toko had given her a little choice. Sojo could understand neither sister.
殺すために生かしたっていうのか。青崎はそれが分かっているのに行こうとしている。
そうよ。勝負はついたけど、まだ私たちの話は終わっていないもの。
I'm guessing Alco's gonna need to use the fifth magic to beat her sister. Because I remember her mentioning that earlier.
確かに全開してから行った方がいいに決まってる。けど、そうしている間にトウコは岬の深部にたどり着く。自分にできることを自分からなくしてしまうのよ。
Though the pain in her azure eyes was not as deep as the pain of death, it spoke of the regret she would feel if she did not do everything possible while blood still flowed through her veins.
納得いったのなら黙ってて。いい。これは私の戦い。あんたには何の責任も関わりもない。私の人生なの。座して死を待つなんてまっぴらごめんよ。勝つ気があるならいつまでもベッドで寝てるわけにはいかないでしょ。
Okay, she is really determined. Sojo was dumbstruck. Alco could never let anyone else get involved. Whether that was because she cared or cared less, or couldn't care less, he could not tell. What he did understand, though, was if he wanted to stop her, he would have to do so with his bare hands. And he knew better than to try that. Even so, he had to ask one last question. If he did not, he would not be able to live with himself after leaving this room.
わからないな。 青崎はなんでそこまでするのか。君を縛っているのは義務と強制。
There was a sadness in his eyes. However, Alco was unmoved by them.
らしくなく難しいこと聞いてくるのね。いいわ。口にしても仕方のないことだけど答えてあげる。
Yeah, honestly, for as mean as she can get, I can't help but like Alco. For one thing, her meanness is not excused by the story. It just outright calls her immature. But honestly, her determination to win at all costs is pretty admirable, actually.
その2つはね、常に私を圧迫してるものだと思う。
Obligation or forcing yourself.
けど勘違いはしないで。義務も強制も誇りも恐れも周りから与えられたものじゃない。トウコと戦うのをやめたところで祖父は私を叱らないだろうし、アリスも文句は言わないでしょう。ここで逃げてもそれはそれで誰にとってもどうでもいい話になって終わるだけだから。他人は関係ない。本当に意味なんてないのよ、何だって。
So, basically, she feels like she has some sort of obligation.
私はトウコから逃げたりしない。これはただのここにいるっていう存在証明なの。私は単に意味がないからこそでき。
With fiery passion, Alko Aozaki had set her piece. Sojiro was left with a pang in his chest. He did not know why, but her words angered him. Then again, at the same time, her self-confidence had him in wonder. Even though she had said that her life had no meaning, her stubbornness gave meaning to everything.
それがたとえ
Without thinking, he started to ask another question. Maybe he wanted to change her mind. Maybe he just wanted to hear her
た
answer.
とえ他の誰も見ていなかったとしても
It came out as a murmur. Indeed, if no one was watching, no one would know. No one could know that she had fled. This was the situation Alko was in, so she shot him down instantly.
あら、見てるわよ。少なくとも私自身がね。
So Alko. Okay. Ah, sorry, dropped something. So Alko's. This is partly a pride thing. Alko would never be able to live with herself. I'm guessing she would never be able to live with herself if she didn't at least, or if she didn't throw everything she had at trying to beat Toko. Like, she wants to give it her all, even if it's gonna kill her, because she knows she can't live with herself otherwise if she just ran or gave up without giving it her all. Her expression brightened, possibly because she had been surprised at having to state the obvious. Sojiro was wide-eyed in shock, but Alko remained nonchalant.
知らないの、宗十郎。生きてく上で一番の観客っていうのはね、他ならぬ自分自身なのよ。
Well, you are your
だか
worst.
ら人生っていうのは油断ならないんじゃない？
Huh. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I guess you are your own worst critic. Sojiro did not respond to her somewhat exasperated tone, but simply rose to his feet. He looked defeated, which was not like him at all.
宗十郎？
すまない。君が素晴らしいことを言っているのはわかるんだ。けど、俺にはわからない。
He meekly walked toward the door. As he placed his hand on the doorknob, he paused. For a few seconds, he fought with himself, desperately trying to think of something to say. No words came forth, so he opened the door, which swung with a strange creak, and he left the room. After watching him go, Alko turned her gaze toward the window. It was nearly evening. A thin veil of darkness was threatening to descend on the town outside. By evening, only Sotro remained in the chapel. He sat alone at the end of a pew, slouching helplessly like a guilty believer ready to confess. The chilly air seeped through the walls, turning breath to mist. The frigid air stole the heat from the body without mercy. Sotro looked around. Under the chapel's tall ceiling and spacious hall, the room made the air feel colder somehow. Unsure of what to do with himself, he stared into space. His thoughts were entirely unfocused. First and foremost, he could not understand what the buzzing sensation was in his chest. Time passed by. No answers came. To onlookers, he must have seemed deep in thought or in a deep sleep, like he would turn to stone if left be. Either way, he clearly looked down. The problem was the lack of awareness. Not that he was aware of it, of course. Hey, 80. Sojiro raised his head and turned to where the voice had come from. Stood before the altar was the man from last night, dressed in priestly garbs. How long had he been standing there? Sound reverberated dryly throughout the chapel hall. Sojiro did not have the strength to stand, let alone leave. He just stared at the approaching shadow. The priest pointed at Sojiro's pew. Without waiting for an answer, he took a seat at the opposite end. Father Eiri spoke in a gentle but uninvested tone. He was a thorough egoist. Sojiro knew all too well about people who spoke this way. The individual who cared for him when he first came down from the mountain was one of them. Sojiro glanced across at him apathetically. Father Eiri seemed unfazed by the lack of direction to the conversation. Sojiro responded with a nod. Father Eiri replied with an artificial smile. Sojiro stared straight ahead as he answered, his voice sounding uncharacteristically weak and unsure. Crush, maybe? With those few words, Sojiro snapped out of his funk. He clapped his hands and turned toward the priest. Father Eiri did not respond to his confession-like ramblings. Well, maybe he's a little envious of Aoko's drive and determination. Really? What? Father Eiri looked at Sojiro placidly. His pupils were like black holes that could suck the soul out of your body. Honestly, that's actually a fair question. Sojiro was not sure what he had done, but it sounded as though the priest was accusing him of something. Then again, it was a reasonable question, if a little pointless. Sojiro had no answer. Father Ada ignored the sullen boy and
山での
continued.
生活がいかに厳しいものかは私も人並みには知っています。若い頃ちょっとした手違いで遭難したこともありますしね。山での生活はこの上なく簡素です。何しろ生きること以外に時間を割く余裕がない。楽しむために生きるのではなく、生きるためにただ生きる。生活は必要最小限をさらに切り詰めたものとなっていく。山での生活に比べれば都市のあり方は楽園以外の何者でもないでしょう。ですが楽園の定義は人それぞれです。
Sodro still did not answer. His expression remained blank. The only sound was a priest's voice echoing around the chapel.
一粒の種の誕生すら喜びになる生活。電気の明かりがどれだけ暖かでも自然のままの厳しい寒さを君は尊んでいたはずです。なのになぜ降りてきたのですか。山にいれば君は幸せだったでしょう。
Father Adri repeated his question. Sodro's mouth remained firmly shut. Not because he did not want to answer, but because he simply did not know how to. All he knew was even if he wanted to go back, he could not.
そこをはっきりさせないことにはいつまでも救いがない。故郷を捨てた理由もわからないのに旅先の土地を愛することなんてまっとうな人間にはできませんよ。これは忠告ですが、全てを無条件に肯定したところで幸福になれるとは限りません。あなたはもう少し自分の心を許してあげないと。
Honestly, that's actually good advice. Sometimes you just need to give yourself a little grace. Because constantly flagellating yourself and beating yourself up over everything is just as bad as holding yourself in too high esteem. Sotro could not make sense of what he was being told. Only the father's last words made any impression on him. Being fairer to yourself is easier said than done, of course. Obviously. What that entailed, Sotro was uncertain of. Toko had mentioned something similar before and it impressed him. First her, now this priest. How could people know things he hadn't even told them? Sotro said, curious as to where the weight on his shoulders had gone to. In a way, one of his strong points is the fact that his emotional scars do not show on the surface.
神父は悩みを暴くのが仕事ですから。ま、大抵は暴くだけで埋めるのに失敗するんですけどね。
悩みを暴くって、
そういうソフトなのも承っています。私が解決できる悩みなど。
Priest shrugged, looking a little disconcerted. Granted, Sotro still did not trust Father Adrian at all, but at that moment, anyone was a ray of light in his eyes.
じゃあ、たかが知れた程度の悩みを聞いてもらえますか。
君が青子をなぜ羨むかですね。
It was as though the priest could see into the boy's soul with his serene eyes.
まあ、自分でもどうしてそう思うのかがわからない。でもあなたならそれを知ってそうだ。
知りませんけど、まあ無責任に答えましょうか。それはおそらくあなたには根拠がないからですよ。
Well, yeah, he is just kind of drifting along.
自分の色がないと例えた方が正確ですが。
Sotro squinted, trying to understand the priest's complicated yet concise answer.
ほら、そこです。君に優れた部分があるとしたら、山という異界から町に降りて、一人で暮らし、ようやく慣れた常識の中で、青子たちという非常識と関わっても暮らしていけたこと、 そうであると努めているにしても、あなたの順応性は際立っている。原因は知りませんが、君には初めから自我というものが第一に現れてはいないのです。何事にも対応できるものの、種に交わるほど器用でもない。強いて言うのなら、色の乗っていない空白ですかね。風景に溶け込む自然さは素晴らしい人徳ですが、自我がないということは居場所がないということですから、いいことばかりじゃありません。ユイカにまで見えないというのは予想以上でしたが、姿なき精霊すら捉えるあれが見えなかったのですから、君の無欲ぶりも筋金入りだ。
As if amused by something, Father Adi grinned. However, Sojiro understood neither the meaning of his smile nor his words.
憶測に過ぎませんが、青子はあなたを見て反感を覚えたと思いますよ。自分のないあなたは自己を押し通してきた彼女にとって認めがたいものだったでしょうから。そして同時にあなたは青子に自分ではどうしても手に入れられないものを見てしまった。
So, Sojiro lacks a strong sense of self, and Aoko is shocked at that. However, Aoko is so sure of who she is and what she's about that Sojiro feels envy at that.
言葉にするとくだらない表現になりますが、そういうことです。
Huh, that's actually pretty interesting. And it kind of makes sense.
先ほどは嫉妬と言いましたが、それは訂正しましょう。君は青子に言葉にするのはそれこそ野暮だ。
Ah, don't leave us there. Don't leave us at that, Father. Father Adi smiled gently. It was a fresh-faced grin that belied his age. Whenever it came to Aoko, he seemed to forget his role as a priest. But that was irrelevant to Sojiro.
神父さん、
What exactly do I admire about Aoko, then? Sojiro responded to Father Adi's rambling by being direct. Some would say the priest had been direct himself, but this was Sojiro, and he needed things spelled out.
今のでもわからないと参りましたね。こういうことは言葉を尽くすほど実感が湧かないものですが、あなたは
詳しくは知りません。高校デビューとかおかしな言葉を口にしてましたけど。
全く知らないということですね。いいでしょう。ではしずきくん、虐待のない例え話ですが、君は突然自殺しろと言われて従えますか？
Okay. Okay, that's certainly an abstract way of trying to explain things.
自殺ですか？
そう、自殺です。神父である私が口にしていいことでは、青子はね、近いことを求められたのです。15歳の時に。彼女がそれまで積み重ねてきた努力も希望も、過去も未来も全て捨てること。今日からお前は違う生き物として生きろ。とね。どうです？それは自己の抹消。未来の死と同じだと思いませんか？
I mean, I guess so. Even if you live in a physical sense, if you lose who you are, you're kind of going ahead as a different person. I mean, I guess. His words fit what Aoko had said about her past. Till middle school, she led a normal life. Then out of the blue, she became the family heiress in place of her sister. Becoming a magician meant casting aside the life she had known. She had to leave behind her ambitions and prospects and live a life of mage, something she barely knew anything about. Her life up to that point had taught her that everything from then on would bring her misery. Aoko's grandfather was not the forceful type. Your sisters failed, now it's your turn, he had said. Did Aoko resist? Sojiro could not begin to imagine. All he knew is that she could not be happy with the hand she was dealt. Even if the life of a magician was attractive, to believe the possibility that Alco gave up her lifestyle up to that point was not to know her at all. Alco Ozaki put her all into everything. She had probably achieved a lot in those 15 years. Her achievements and prospects were no doubt enough to make anyone jealous. But did she have the conviction to throw those away and go back to square one? And square one did not come close to the reality of it. The future she had envisioned for so long would have been obliterated.
青子はどうしたんですか？
いやー、これがもう全くの頑固者でして立ち会った私でさえどうかと思うぐらい簡単にうなずきました。震える指を懸命に握り込んでやってやろうじゃないと見栄を切ってね。彼女は祖父の期待や青崎の責任感からではなく、逃げることを嫌って魔術師の道を取ったんですよ。拒むことは逃げではないのでしょうが、青子にはそう思えたんでしょう。逃避という行為はこれまでの自分の時間を否定することになると。今までの自分を嘘にしてしまうのなら、今までの生活に別れを告げることを青子は選んだのです。まあ極端ではありますが、あれは前に進むためなら全てを捨てられる人間なんです。
An affectionate smile crossed Father Adri's face. Rather than signaling his closest to Alco, conveyed the pride of a guardian.
ですが、私も思い違いをしていました。結局はそうなるように、青子は育てられていたのです。彼女の祖父は、東子が家を出ることも、青子が跡継ぎを了解することも読んだ上で、あの二人を育ててきた。形だけですが、私も神父としてさすがにそれはどうかと思いましてね。柄にもなく青子を説得、祖父の思い通りになることはありません。なんなら私とメキシコあたりに逃げませんかと。しかしまあ躊躇なく振られました。その時の彼女の返答は今でも一言一句覚えています。
だって私一人がどんなに泣き叫んでも今の状況は変わらないんでしょ。私にしかできないなら正面から受けて立つ。たとえ不本意で突然投げ込まれた川の中でだってできることはあるはずだもの。逃げるなんてのは最後の最後に。それまではせいぜい華麗に踊ってやるわ。
The priest recited her words as if recalling lines from a favorite play. It certainly seemed like something she would say. Last thing Alco said in the room she was recovering in probably meant the same. Of course, when an audience is watching, you want their approval. However, approval must come from within first. Alco worked to feel proud of herself before worrying about how others viewed her. She at least wanted to do her job with grace. In response to everything she had lost, she would hang in there, even if it meant going it alone. As for why Sojo envied her, well, that was obvious. Sojo, she lived her life with her head. She lived her life with her head held high. He was a boy who accepted everything but had nothing. She was a girl who threw it all away but never lost a thing. He stood in the meeting room alone, seeing the ugliness within and the sublime outside. Looking back, he finally realized what was eating at him.
もういいでしょう。君は青子の養子に感じ入ったのではなく、青崎青子という生き方に感じ入ったのです。ま、青子は青。
Sojo nodded. The day he first met her, that was indeed how he had felt. It just took him till now to realize it. The strength in her eyes and her unwavering will had captured his heart.
なんかすごい痩せ我慢だ。
本当に小娘のくせにギネス級の頑固さです。
Father Adri spoke from the heart. Sotaro raised his head, gave a small grin, and scratched his cheeks. So many hours wasted brooding like an idiot. Part of him still felt strange, but it didn't bother him to leave the question unsolved for now. Unable to stand still, he stood up. He couldn't care less about the Aozaki family, mage battles, or Aoko rushing off to her death. Right now, he just wanted to see her face.
お待ちなさい。病室は立ち入り禁止です。
Cold words echoed around the chapel. It reached Sojiro as he was about to head back to Aoko. The sightless sister must have been waiting by the altar. She moved quickly to block his path.
今病室には入れないんですか？
はい。しばらく人よけをしてほしいとクオンジ様からことづかっています。
アリスが？
Sojiro was suspicious why Alice would have said that. He could understand being kept out if Aoko was being treated or her condition had worsened, but this seemed different. Besides, Aoko herself said her treatment had finished.
人がいいのですね、シスターユイカは。そんな方便をしなくてもいいんですよ。はっきり言ってあげればいい。今から病室に行っても無駄です。と。
Alright, Aoko already jumped out the window.
青子はとっくに出発しているんですから。
エイリ神父。
The priest began to explain everything from the pew he still sat in, about the things he and Sojiro had spoken about. Why he, a stranger, would be so concerned about a person he knew nothing about. It all became clear to Sojiro.
初めからそのつもりだったんですね。
Also, Sojiro wouldn't go and try to stop Aoko. Sojiro's voice was full of anger, but Father Avery did not flinch.
申し訳ありません。青子にあなたの保護を頼まれたもので。
Well, at the very least, this meant that this helped. At the very least, this helped Sojiro figure a few things out.
彼女の準備が整うまでの時間稼ぎでしたが、私があなたと話をしたかったのは。
The priest's attempt to smooth things over was far from sincere. Sojiro grit his teeth to control his rage. Why had they not stopped Aoko and Alice from heading towards certain death? Because both the nun and priest were of the same ilk as he. Because both the nun and priest were of the same ilk as the mages. As such, they understood Aoko's decision, and the priest understood Aoko too. Even if he did have the power to stop her, he would not have. The Aoko Ozaki knew was not about to hide away in a church and lick her wounds.
アリスは？
Yeah, no, Aoko is far too stubborn.
青子と行きましたよ。あれから30分は過ぎていますね。
Father Avery went so far as to divulge the time. 30 minutes ago, same time the priest reared his head. It would not take even half that long to get to the school from here. And then another 10 minutes or less to get to Misaki's old school building from there. Sojiro turned to the entrance of the chapel. However,
待ちなさい。どこへ行くつもりですか？
the sound of her voice stopped him in his tracks. An unseen pressure had locked him in place. Her admonition seemed to carry a spellbinding power, stopping the foolhardy boy where he stood.
あなたは魔術師同士の争いを知りません。何の助力にもならないばかりか。彼女たちの足かせになるだけです。彼女たちが命を落とすのは彼女たちの業によるもの。あなたのような何の咎もない若者が教示に立ち会うことはありません。
She spoke with quiet anger. Her contempt was not directed at Aoko or Alice, though, but Sojiro for being so eager to waste his life.
何かしら希望があるのなら私も止めはしません。ですがこの件は別です。あなたが言っても彼女たちが助かることはありません。
Well, she's harsh, but at the very least, she's actually doing it for his own good. She was right. It'd be pointless of him to go. The amusement park, he'd been useless in the end. Now they faced something even worse. He couldn't even imagine how he might contribute this time.
言っておきますが、青崎青子は祖父に護身術を教え込まれています。魔術以外でもあなたより腕は立つ。その彼女もあの使い魔が相手では勝負にならない。
Sojiro's physical strength, his only edge meant nothing. If he went now, he would only get in their way. Yuiko was correct. And yet...
でも行かないと。青子には返さなくちゃいけない借りがあります。
He spoke calmly but firmly. Though almost moved, the sister frowned slightly. She felt bad for him, but her warning was for his own good. If he would not listen to reason, then she would have to make him sleep. She raised a finger, binding at Sojiro.
それを言うなら返したい借りがあるですよ。それとシスターユイカ、教会内での魔術は控えてくださいね。使うのなら筆跡に留めてもらわないと私の査定に響きます。まったくおとなしそうに見えて律香君より短気なんですからあなたは。
エイリ神父、しかし
行かせてあげればいいじゃないですか。それともあなたはやはり青子たちに退場してほしいと。
その問題と彼の献身は別の話です。改めなさい、しずきさん。あなたが言っても何もできはしないのですから。
The truth of the statement cut Sojiro deep, but despite everything that was being said, his mind was made up. It always had been. Even if he was not certain, he at least would not hesitate. He had always followed his instincts to the end, no matter where they took him.
分かっています。でも行かないとここにいたら本当に何もできない。
His heart burned in his chest. While he listened to the priest talk, he could only think of seeing Alco. He was not worried. He did not want to help. He just wanted to see her. He'd figure out what came next once he got there.
ほら、献身なんて考え自体が間違ってる。足を引っ張ると言いますが、どの道青子たちに勝ち目はないんでしょ。なら彼がマイナスになってもいいじゃないですか。どうせ破産するなら豪快に破産すれば。
神父、
ほら宗十郎君、言って言って。シスター、今のあなたの返事で心が折れましたから。
Honestly, the man's got, or the
動くでしょ。
guy's got absolute guts for going there. As soon as the priest pointed at Sojiro, he could move again. Pressure weighing on his shoulders lifted, along with the fear in his heart. Could he help? Would he expose Alco and Alice to more danger?
行きます。縁が残っていればまた。
All such doubts had vanished.
はい。なんであれ、後悔のない一日を。
And with that, Sojiro began to run. His father Adi watched with a look of satisfaction. The priest knew if he could not persuade Alco, he could not convince Sojiro either. He watched the impetuous boy run away, as the blind nun listened to his footsteps fade into the distance. Yuika was different from Sojiro and the priest. While she showed no mercy to corruption or self-righteousness, she embraced it. While she showed no mercy to corruption or self-righteousness, she embraced benevolence to the innocent. Such an ordinary boy with his life ahead of him, and yet he chose to follow heretics into hell.
最悪ですね、エイリ神父。分別のつかない子供を導くのが責任のある大人だと思いましたが。
She made no effort to hide her biting disapproval. It was simply her way of showing concern for the boy. Father Adi shrugged.
だからいろいろと間違えていますよ、シスターユイカ。責任のある大人なんて言葉自体がおかしい。何が起きても責任を取る。それが正しい大人というものです。
The rest went unspoken. It didn't matter to him which of them died. With a warm, goodly smile, the priest corrected the nun's misunderstanding. Dude doesn't care at all. The man does not care in the slightest. He's just waiting. He doesn't care at all. He's just waiting for which one of them gets killed so he can get back to figuring out who owns the land. I like Yuika, but Adi's kind of a jerk. Okay, but yeah, that's gonna be the end. Or we're not gonna go any further tonight. But once we get to Wednesday, I guess Wednesday is gonna be the last stream for this game. and thus ending the longest series on the channel so far. Ah, man, this has been. I've been really enjoying this. Like it is real good. But yeah, this is gonna be the. I just realized what. I just realized it. I probably should have realized this earlier. The game's title, when translated into English, Witch on the Holy Night. The Holy Night is referring to Christmas Eve. I don't know why I just made that connection. That. Oh, but yeah, I don't know how I just made that connection. But yeah, that is going to be the end of the stream tonight. But yeah, I'm really excited for. I am so excited for Wednesday. I want to see how this ends. I want to see how Alco manages to beat or kick Toko's teeth in. It's gonna be real. It's gonna be so. It's gonna be so fun. It's gonna be great watching someone as smug as Toko get one upped. But yeah, that is gonna be the end for the stream tonight. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you on Wednesday with the next and final installment of Witch on the Holy Night. So, until Wednesday, take care.